Hey guys, I am Nishan and welcome to Cybernetico. So, in this video, let's learn about API requests in React. So, mainly we will use a library called Axios. So, let me install it. We can say npm I Axios. And my app is not running, so let's start the app. Npm start. Fine. So, this API requests, wait a second. Force. Oh, no, like this, yes. So mainly the requests are of four types. Post request to add data in the database. Post, then we have read, or we can say get to get data in the database. We have put or patch to update, and we have delete to delete the document from the database, from the API. So we have four API request types. We can say post request, get request, put request, put or patch, anything, or okay, let me make capital, put or patch, and delete. Let me make the post to be capital like this. Fine. Save. Post, put, get, and delete. We have this four types of requests in. What is this? Okay, so we have four types of request mainly that we normally use. So I have a mock API, and here we can send our data or request. First, let me create the mock API. We can say the project name as API requests. Requests. Then leave all these things. Click create. It will create a API request project. We can say new resource. Let me add the endpoint of, let's say, users. We don't need all of these things, just leave at user ID. Then click create. And here you see we have all the endpoints for get, for post, put, and delete. So for delete, we can simply pass the ID like this. For update ID, post, we just have to post using /users, and for get, we can have two endpoints to get all the users and to get one user. So click create first. I will show you later what is all these things. Now we have this users endpoint here. If you open this, you will see it here. It's currently empty with no data inside. So Axios has been installed now. Let's import the library here. We can simply say import Axios from Axios like this. Fine. Let me create a function. Say const post data. It will be an arrow function. Fine. So in the post data, we will add this. So we will have Axios dot post method, because we are using post data. I mean, we are posting data or sending data to the database. Then we will copy the endpoint and we will simply add it here. This URL we got is the endpoint for posting data to the here to mock API, this database. Then second thing it takes is one curly bracket we will have to open, and the thing it takes is the data itself. First is the link or the endpoint. Second is the data itself. So let's say we post some name called Nishant. Let's say have some age called 26. Let's say some hobbies. So we can make an array here. Hobbies will contain, let's say, poetry. Then second thing it will contain will be cooking. Then third thing, let's add traveling. Fourth thing, let's add programming, or let's say coding. That's what I'm doing right now. Let's add one more, which is piano. Fine. So we have all these things like name is string, this one is number, and this one is an array. Fine. So when this function runs, it will post the data to this mock API. So we need one button to trigger the function. So we can say post data. On click of this button, we will have this post data function. And as soon as we click the button of post data, it will send data to this API. Let's try this. And one more thing, let me show you. Open the network tab. Open the console. I mean the inspect and the network tab. So whatever we are having the call, whatever call we are having, API call, this will show up in the networks tab in the Chrome Web Tools or Chrome Dev Tools. Okay, yes. Now click post data. See, this API has been called and it's sending the payload. Payload means the data we are sending, which is which has the age, all the hobbies that we wrote statically, and the name Nishant. If we check the preview, we will see the same thing, but with ID. So the payload, where is it? Okay, this payload, it means payload. This payload is means the payload means the data we are sending to the API call. This preview means the data we are receiving from the call. Preview or response, they are same. Okay. See, now we are getting one ID also here. This is the response, and the payload is the request. So request we sent and a response we got. If we refresh the API here, we should see the data here in an array like this. So you can make all of this dynamic by using a form field. For example, let's say I have input placeholder of name. Let's add a state here. Let me create a state first. If you know what is states, they are simply variables. In React, we have to import use state hook from React. Sorry, use state from React. Then let's create a state called let's say state of name and set name. Currently we don't need set name, but let's just create it. Let it be empty at first. Then on, okay, we do need set name. I was wrong. So on change of the input, we will simply call set name, or we can simply set the target.value in the set name or name variable name state using event.target.value, not validation message, value. Save. Now whatever we type in this name, it will be stored inside the name state. Let me bring the button after the input, and in the name we can simply add the name property like this. Now let's try to add some data. Let's say name should be Shailesh. Click post data. So it has been sent, and see, now the name has been changed to Shailesh. It's not static now, it's dynamic depending on the input. And here also we will get the same thing, but the name will be Shailesh. See, that's all for post method. Now let's check the get method, how it works. Get means getting all the data from the users. So let me store, or well, let me show you one more thing. See, if I add this then block here and response, in the post we can use, what is it, we can say a promise. So console.log, we can check our promise using this. It means when the post API call is complete, we will have some input in the console or in our UI. Or if it is an error, if the post method fails, it will show us an error. So we can simply console.error this error like this. Now if you open the console, click something like Uday and click post data. Okay, it's not coming here. Post name. Okay, let check network. Okay, this hasn't been called, I think. Open console, refresh the page. Okay, now it's here. See, we can see all the data. we can just simply call res.data to get this data object inside. Save this, and now it will return the data only. Click something else like Abhishek. Click post data. It will take some time, but it will be here because I think it's a little bit slower. See, now we have this with hobbies, that all the static values and the dynamic value of name. So that's it. And in case of any errors, we will get an error in the console, not this. So that was promise after API call. Fine. Now what was I going to show you? Okay, yes. Get request. So in this API, we have all the data, like the data we sent here. If we refresh, we should get it. Now let's get them. To get them, we will use an use effect hook here. Sorry, yes, use effect hook. That will run when our page mounts for the first time only. But now we can change it as per our needs. So add an empty array here for it to work. Here we are calling axios.post, but here we can simply call axios.get for getting all the data. So copy this endpoint, user's endpoint, and just simply paste it here. Fine. And we can do the same thing here as well. So when the post is complete, it will return some promise, then an catch block, and in the get request as well, it will return some promise like get, like then and catch. But in this case, we will get all the data. So save and let's try refresh the page. See, we are getting four arrays, four array objects of all the data we are getting here. Four array objects. Let me store them in an array state. So say const, let's say data, or say users, and set users. Use state, this will be an array because this is a whole array we are getting. We have to set this whole array in the state of users like this, not in the post, in the get. So that's done. That's how it is useful. Then catch block. Fine. So now this users have our all the data. When we load, we can simply do this. Users.map. Let's say user. It will return something like let's say one fragment first. Then it will return us an h1 that will have the user not name. Let's only print the name for now. So we have all the names here. Okay, let me make this h2 because it's much bigger. Fine. Now we have all the names here like this. Fine. So we are getting all the names, and that was get request. So we have done post and get. Now let's try updating the data. How will we update the data? So let's create a function to update the data. Updation is similar to this post data, but a few changes is needed. So const update data equals to an arrow function like this. Fine. Now we have to create a button here in this fragment button. Say update. So we will have to specify which document to update or which data. Like we have to update the Nishant one, Shailesh, or Uday, or Abhishek. We have which field we have to update. We will use the ID because see, we have this ID and it's all unique. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4 for each one. This is 1, this is 2, 3, and 4. Okay, let me do this. Before this user.name, we can simply do user.id. Let's print the ID. And let's add a dot here. Dot and a space. Okay, we have this dot. Let's add the space, but it will not work. So we will do this. Wrap this in string literals like this and add a dollar. I think I'm doing it wrong. Wait. Let me clear it out. We can say string literals. Yes. Or wait, I think it's just like this. String literals. we can use again a string literal again. Sorry, not string literal, a curly bracket. Then we will have user dot id. Inside the string literals, we will have one more curly bracket, and we will use user dot name. In this way, we can give a space between them and one dot. So 1 dot Nishan, 2 dot Shailesh, 3 dot Uday, and 4 dot Abhishek. So all of these have an ID 1, 2, 3, and 4. So on base of this ID, we will update the data, update the array object. So we can say on click, when we click the button, we have to send this ID to a function, which will be this function, update data. So we will send the ID or user.id like this. Let's get the ID from the function here. And if we console.log this ID, let's see what we get. Open the console, clear it, click any field like Nishan. We are getting 1, click Shailesh, we will get 2, and so on. Now we have a unique parameter called ID that can be used to update the records. Fine. So for update method, we will have to use axios dot put or patch. So we have a put method, then we will add the endpoint, this endpoint. Added. Second thing it takes is the data, which will be the new data. So let's copy these things, these 3 things, and add it here. So it has been added, all these 3 things. So let's alter some things. See, initially the age is 26 for all. Let's make the age should be 27. And let me add one more object here, or add a field here called, let's say we have poetry, cooking, traveling, coding, piano, let's say sleeping. Save. And third parameter it will take will be the ID itself. So we can simply pass the ID like this. So we are getting all this, giving it all the things that it needs. Then we will have to use this then and catch block. So then will be called in case it is successful, or catch in case if it fails. So let's try. Remove this console log. Open the console. So you can also use network type to see the request. So let's add some name here called, let's say, what can we add the name here? Let's say Sanjeet. Now click Nishant, update here. Okay. Console.error is not a function. We have something wrong. Open the network tab. See, that's thrown an error because we are having an error. So actually we did a mistake here. We don't have to send the ID here like this because it's not in the query. It's in the path params. So if we check this documentation, let me click the project. Let me check how to do this. New resource. See, if you check here, in the put, we have to pass the ID like this after the endpoint. So cancel it. In this users, we can simply set one more forward slash curly brackets, and before the curly brackets, a dollar for rendering a variable like an ID, like a dynamic ID. Now it will work. Refresh the page. Type Sanjeet here. Now click update. Open the console. Let's check what we are getting. See, we are getting this object here, and the name has been changed to Sanjeet for the ID number 1. Refresh the page. Refresh the page, and it will be changed. Sanjeet is now at the first position in this API endpoint as well, in the mock API I mean. So it's see, Sanjeet is now here at the place of Nishant. We can do the same for others, like we can add Mayank here and click Uday. This Uday will be changed to Mayank. Refresh the page. Mayank will be on the 3rd number. Refresh. What's wrong? Refresh this. I think network problem. Yes, now it's here, Mayank. So that was about updating data. So let me write some comments here for clarification. This one is post request. This one is put request. Put means updating data. Request. The fourth one or this one is called, let's comment it under the use effect hook. Under the use effect hook. So this will be get request. And the last one is left, which is called delete. So let's do that as well. Create one more button for this. We will add a delete text here for the button label. And in the place of update data, we will use the delete function. So just copy this update data function and duplicate it. Delete data, this will be called. Delete data. Everything will be the same, but we don't have to use the second param here. We don't have to send the data. We simply have to delete this. Let me now map the function to this button and it will work. Let's try. Fine. This is the delete method. Let me write delete method. Fine. Now click delete in any one of them, like Shailesh. If we refresh, Shailesh won't be here, but it is here. Let me check this. Okay. This should be not put delete method. We have to add it here. Delete for delete. Now let's try. Click delete in Shailesh. Click here in the API endpoint page and see, we don't have the Shailesh name here anymore. We have Sanjeet, Mayank and Abhishek. We can also do one more thing here. We can simply call this use effect hook or this get function in another function to render the updated data after deletion. That's not for the scope, or let's do that as well. Let me create one more function here, const get data. Add all the things here and simply we will call this get data function here. Get data. And same function we will call here when we delete. That way, this delete function will be get called and it will delete or it will refresh the page with the updated data. Click Mayank. Okay, not deleted. Let's try. Okay, so now deleted. We have only Sanjeet and Abhishek. Click Sanjeet, delete button here. It won't be anymore. Fine. So that was all the 4 requests. Let me copy and cut and paste get here. Fine. So we have seen post, put, patch and delete. I mean post, get, put and delete. The patch works the same way as put. Where is it? Put here. But fine. So what can we do else? Fine. In the get request, you see, where is it? Here. We are getting all the data. So let me add one more called Nishant. Click post data. Now refresh. This will be here. Let me add one more called Uday. Post data. It will be here as well. But in the documentation, you will see. Let me open new resource. We have 2 things for get. We can either get one data or we can get all data. So currently we are getting all the data. Let's try to get one data. So in the users, we can simply pass the ID, which is, let's say, we have 4 for Abhishek. So we don't have to use this, just add 4. Now we will only see for Abhishek. But the problem is we will get an object, not an array. So we can console.log this to check. Open the console, refresh. See, now we are getting an object of Abhishek like this. Fine. So that was get by ID and directly get for all with no ID path params. So that's all for now. And that was all about Axios or API requests. I mean Axios API request, that's fine. Okay then.